And good evening, everyone. Welcome to WKYC's coverage of the high school football game of the week for 2019. We kick things off at Art Wright Stadium in Wadsworth, where the host Grizzlies take on the Highland Hornets. I'm Dave DeNatale alongside Mark Munch Bishop. Munch will be joining me in just a second. He's actually walking up right. We're about ready to kick off right now. It'll be Highland receiving to start this game. Highland coming in off of an 8-2 record last year. There's my dog. Mark Munch Bishop will join me here in just a second. I know we all had to run here today. Look, Munchy, get a deep breath, and we'll get you hooked up here and ready to go.
I'm good, baby.
And then the Wadsworth Grizzlies, they were 12-8 last year, made all the way to the final round of the playoffs, but then ran into the buzzsaw, that's the Massillon Tigers, and saw their season come to an end. But the Grizzlies are coming into this thing winners of 21 straight in the regular season. And put that on there too, Munchy. There you go. Get you in our camera shot here as well as we are set to go. Say hi, everybody. And then,
hey. Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. The kick will go out of the end zone. It will be out of bounds, actually, from Wadsworth. It will be Highland football. Welcome aboard.
Shout out. There's a lot of breath to the Wadsworth finalists because we listen to my show and they hear me end every show where you see a police officer put your hand up, thank you for what they do.
Well,
because they were turning me away.
Yeah,
and there were no spots.
And you said, "Hey, listen, I'm all about the Wadsworth PD. They do a great job." Now the opening kick went out of bounds. That means Highland will start tonight at their own 35-yard line to get this ball game underway. We'll get you the starters here in a second. Bryce Prophet will operate the offense for the Hornets.
One of the caps is interesting. The Jake Rogers was Highland's Hornet.
I'm going to get to that with you. On first down, Prophet will fake the handoff on the end around and keep it himself. He'll put his head down and go forward to about the 37 for a gain of 2. We started last year, Munch, with Highland at Brunswick, and it really was the Jake Rogers show. Mm-hmm. He had a couple of picks. He had a touchdown on a dazzling punt return, and he's now at Bowling Green playing for the Falcons, and it's a different look to this offense. Second down and 8 coming up. Prophet in the pistol. We'll have Harrison Truitt standing behind him, and Truitt will get the handoff. Falls forward to the 38-yard line. Only a gain of 1. And it's a good surge. Actually, listen, that was Anthony Ross, not Harrison Truitt. And it'll bring up a third down and long here for the Hornets.
And the people of Wadsworth are very excited about with their program. Things are going in a different direction. From the helmets on down the line, people are rallying around this flag. And what a great close-knit community this is too for all their youth sports.
Oh, it's wonderful. And we'll get to Justin Todd and what he's done since he arrived here. Third down and about 7. Prophet being blitzed. He gets sacked back at the 30-yard line. As Karsten Marshall, the strong safety, coming in on the blitz for the Grizzlies, came in on the backside, and Prophet was a little shaken up as he got off the field, but it's a 3-and-out for the Hornets, and an impressive start to the football game by the Wadsworth Grizzly defense.
And I'm going to tell you this, shows you immediately, we talked about what Justin Todd is doing. You mentioned the first on that tackle was a strong safety.
Yeah.
They're bringing the strong safety in high school from the weak side, and he tracked him down.
Austin Regenberg will punt it away for the Hornets. It's a low-line drive kick. It's going to drive Barrett Labus back to the 30. He's just going to let it go inside the 25, inside the 20, and out of bounds at the 19-yard line of the Grizzlies. An excellent punt from Austin Regenberg. And it'll be 1st and 10 Wadsworth as we get Trey Schaefer, Dom Laparo, and the rest of this high-powered Grizzlies offense back on the field. Now, on the flip side, Schaefer's back. He operated the offense last year. Laparo's back. He split the duties last year with Brock Snowball.
Yes.
He's going to be the go-to guy this year.
And you know what? From what players tell me that practice with him, he runs with bad intent.
Yeah.
Which is what you want.
And Schaefer says on 1st down and 10, he'll go out of the shotgun, standing back at his 14. From the 19, Grizzlies look to throw on 1st down. Schaefer's got all kinds of time. Pass is deflected, and a rolling catch is made at the 24-yard line by wide receiver Ethan Korecki. That's a gain of 5. It'll be 2nd and 5. Grizzlies will get the play from the sideline and go quickly to to the line of scrimmage here. But Schaefer had all kinds of time to throw there.
Only rushing 4, and 5 blockers held him off nicely.
Trips right side. Now they will send Labus in motion left. 2 receivers to each side. Schaefer rolling left, throws left. Labus with the catch at the 30. Goes down the sideline to the 40, to the 50, and finally taken down in Highland territory at about the 46-yard line.
Something else for Labus. Not only is he quick if he catches it in stride, but shifty.
Yes.
He'll give you that little change of pace and boom. You know, I always say there's always one more gear there for the great receivers, and he was just getting ready to kick that one in.
Out of the pistol, Leparos will get the carry, straight ahead, big hole to the 40. He's to the 35, 30, 25, 20, lost the football inside the 15. I think he might have gotten it back at the 13-yard line. He did. Wow, that was almost a disaster for the Grizzlies, but instead, they're going to have it 1st and 10 inside the Highland 15.
Talk about a juke left, juke right. There's a player there just picking up his socks there from the Hornets side. Boy, he just took care of him, and a hole blaster right in the middle.
Now, Dom usually is very sure-handed. It had ripped away from him. They'll fake to him, throw over the middle. Labus has the catch at the 5 and darts into the end zone. Touchdown.
Didn't take long, Dino, did it?
No, Trey Schaefer to Barrett Labus from 12 yards out, and the Grizzlies have drawn first blood in this 2019 season.
Nothing fancy.
No.
Wide open in space, just went down. A tough place to play a zone. I know Coach Gibbons is going to fix that in a hurry. Real tough place to play a zone. You always have to go man down here when you're so close to the end zone.
But Schaefer was deadly accurate with his passing on that drive. Got one to Korecki and a couple of Labus, including the touchdown, with a Leparo run mixed in. Extra point coming for Blake Toronto. Off the hold of Robbie Lynn. 8:57 to go, first quarter. 6-0 Grizzlies. And here's the extra point. It is up. And it is good by Toronto. 7-0. Wadsworth Grizzlies, Mark Butch Bishop, before you can blink your eyes, they started out inside their own 20, but just in that jet offense that Justin Todd loves to run, came down the field. And, you know, Justin Todd said this week, hey, look, if the defense will let me run it 40 times, we'll run it 40 times. But I've got a quarterback who, by the way, can throw it 40 times if we need to. And Trey Schaefer looked awfully good on that drive.
Yeah, and not just Schaefer, but on the big run that time, it was unbelievable. It was unfancy. It was the one hole. I won't get too trickery with you two. You know, it was just the hole between the center and the left guard, and that was Lilly and who was on that side? Gordon was center, Lilly the left guard. Dino, I could have ran through that hole.
Right.
And I've lost a step or two.
Not much.
Just one.
Just one step.
Just one.
And the other thing, Munch, was, I know Schaefer had quick throws there, but I thought on that drive, the offensive line's pass protection was excellent.
Excellent. They didn't breathe on it.
No, especially on that first throw to Korecki. That was like the fourth option there, and they were still able to complete it. Well, the last time, Toronto kicked one out of bounds. Justin Todd is looking for him to get it between the numbers here, and Highland going to have to rebound here after the quick touchdown by the Grizzlies. This kick will get angled to the right. Could have let it go, and Aiden Castellanes picked up the football, tried to tightrope along the right sideline, and they're going to actually say when he caught the ball, he caught it with a foot out of bounds at the 7-8 yard line. That's where they're going to spot it.
Trying to make something happen when he just should have let the ball go out.
Frustration moment there.
The young man I want you to keep an eye on here on defense is Nick Razik. He is a 3-year starter. Also, talking to folks, 5'11", 225, doesn't come off the field on defense. Last year for the playoff game, I believe he had to be helped to his family car after he gives it all.
All right, Bryce Profit. Last year, an All-Ohio wide receiver. This year, he'll be back at quarterback, position he played earlier in his career. On first down, they'll go on the right side to Anthony Ross. Ross gets to the 5 and then got pushed back. Jack Rice, outside linebacker, in there to lead the charge. And Karsten Marshall was also in there as well. They're going to mark him actually inside the 5, back at the 4. That is a 3-yard loss, 2nd and 13.
Very impressive, too, because the first man, the linebacker, to hit him did not relinquish him. He did pull out of his tackle. I'm seeing sure tackling early on from the Grizzlies, too.
And somewhere here, Highland's got to figure out how to get around this front seven. They are getting in Bryce Prophet's face, and they're getting in the running back's faces. Prophet on 2nd and 13 will give the ball to Truitt. Truitt runs right side to the 10, to the 15. Hayes to the 20, to the 30. Truitt to the 40, to the 50. Goes left side and finally brought down at the Wadsworth 40-yard line by cornerback Mike Jackson. But the Highland Hornets were desperate for something, for anything. And Harrison Truitt delivered, but Munch, there's a flag back at the 2-yard line.
The hole was so big, I'm wondering if one of the linemen grabbed on that defense and pulled them off to the side.
Because Truitt was kind of running to his right, and I'm wondering if one of the line guys on the left were the ones who made the hold.
And Dino, the sad thing is there's holding on every play. However, if it's a hold on the guy running through, you're going to get the flag.
Yeah, I was talking to some of the guys over for Wadsworth Community Radio. One thing the officials are gonna be calling this year, keep an eye, we'll be talking about it all season long, tripping, which is something that has
shooting that leg out?
Yeah.
What, are the kids watching old films of Conrad Vogler?
That's why I said the same thing. I'm like, wait, was it, did they just realize that this has been going on? But so it's just one of the rule changes we'll be keeping an eye on this year. That holding penalty will move it back to the 1-yard line.
And it was on the 40 of Wadsworth. That's a little bit of a diff, as we call it.
Yes, it is. About a 50-yard diff. Prophet tries to run out of the end zone and just did cross to the 1-yard line and then lost the ball, but they said he was already down. But just fortunate to not get the safety. But now, it's 3rd and 16. Forget about the in the end zone, throws, and incomplete at the wide receiver, Alex Jaworski, covered by
another play. He was the one that tracked down Harrison Truitt earlier, but the
or 4th down, I should say, as Labus will stand in single safety at the Highland 35. Regenberg gets the kick away. Labus with the catch at the 37. Runs behind a block to the 30. Labus to the 25. Outside of the 20. And Truitt will knock him out of bounds inside the 20. Near the 15-yard line. But the Grizzlies, with 7:04 to go in this first quarter, already lead 7-0. And now they have an opportunity to tack on more points.
Labus, whether he's catching the football and running or just taking it off and running, his scouting report is right on.
Yeah.
That he's quick, he's shifty. I love what Wadsworth did on that play too, Dino. What'd they do? I call it the old Jesse James, the old hold 'em, okay?
Yep.
Rather than rush, they just held up the special team players from Highland to a turn. Why not in that situation?
Why not?
Yes.
Give Karsten Marshall credit for some good blocking downfield to spring Labus. 1st and 10, spotted from the 17. Leparo gets the carry. He'll go to the 15. Maybe inside the 15, but that's about it. Only a short pickup of about 2. It'll be 2nd down and 8. Sam Wabel, the defensive tackle, on the stop for the Hornets.
Right now, Wadsworth clicking on all gears, and I'm going to tell you this, as we look at the stands, there's still some gaps in the Wadsworth side. That's probably about 500 people still in line trying to get tickets.
Yeah, I know. We'll get to that in a second. Schaefer to throw, looking. Leparo with the catch at the 10. He goes to the 5 and all the way in. Touchdown, Wadsworth Grizzlies. With his 2nd touchdown pass of this first quarter. And with 6:30 to play in the opening frame, 13-0 Wadsworth.
2 scores now, Dino, in less than 2 minutes and 27 seconds.
They're not waiting a long time. Justin Todd has the offense in high gear early on here tonight.
And Schaefer is in command wholeheartedly.
Extra point by Toronto is good. 14-0 Grizzlies. about halfway through this first quarter. We mentioned, you come in, most high school football stadiums are on campus. This is one of the rarities. Art Wright Stadium is actually at Wadsworth Community Park. It's a beautiful setting. It's a great stadium. It's one of our favorite places over the last 2 years. Now it's our second time we've been here. It's a great facility. Now, the one kicker is, because it's landlocked inside a park, you have one way to get in and you got one way to get out. And so, when you pack them up, and Wadsworth fans have both traveled tonight, parking and traffic flow is a bit of an issue.
So now, I did take some back ways. I had some agents provocateurs set me up, through the neighborhood. Mitch Pasquarella, by the way, from Bedford.
I love Mitch
He's
Pasquarella.
a Wadsworth resident, but the bottom line is he got me through. Got a little bit of traffic before I pulled in to welcome to, Wadsworth Memorial Park. But here's what's interesting. Great communities. And I'm not getting hokey with you. This was the backbone of America.
Right.
Stadium nowhere near. Which is real nice at the night. Park there. There's.
Now this kick will. Highland Hornets at that spot. Highland's got to find some. This is going to be over early, already lead, and quite frankly, they've made. Quarter 14-0 Wadsworth. 1st and 10 from the 27 for Highland. And the give is to Truitt. And Truitt is going to be nailed behind the line of scrimmage. Karsten Marshall, at third time, I think we've called his number among those on the charge. Tyler Swartz, the defensive end there as well. That'll be a loss of about a yard and a half. Again, 2nd and long for the Hornets.
Marshall, one of those cornerbacks that, I like cornerbacks too that want to support the run too, Dino. Deion Sanders, although he's in the Hall of Fame, he needed to do that.
Marshall, 6'3", 197 pounds, and he has been very active on defense and special teams thus far. On 2nd and long, Profit will throw over the middle screen, caught at the 30, out to the 34 line. A couple yards shy of the first down is Brady Linder, and that's a guy we're going to have to hear his name called a lot tonight if you're the Highland Hornets.
One thing, too, not only was it set up perfectly over the middle, 3 blockers out in front, executed as good as they can, but that's what I expect from a Gibbons coach team.
Give him about 9 on that pickup. It'll be 3rd and 3 for the Hornets at about the Highland 34.
How big is this to get a first down?
Massive.
Yeah, and keep Wadsworth offense off the field.
Trips left for the Hornets. 3rd and 3. Back to throw Profit. Blitzed from the backside. Loops it up and incomplete at the 39-yard line. Was trying to throw it to Luke Stewart, but again, Profit being blitzed, and that backside blitzer is not being picked up. I think that time it was the linebacker, Nick Metzger, coming in, and Profit just does not have time to throw the football.
No, not at all, and he got decked pretty good, too, as he released. The defensive player was in motion, though, so it wasn't like throw and knock it down. Yeah, he picked himself off the turf again.
So for the 3rd time in this first quarter, Austin Riggenberg will punt the football to Barrett Labus. Riggenberg, before he punts it, there's a timeout taken by the Hornets with 5:05 to play here in this first quarter. And again, there's urgency, and then for Mike Gibbons, this is big-time urgency. You're already down 2 touchdowns to an explosive offense. And, look, Highland can score. We've known this about their offense. They can score. But if this turns into, a game of who gets the ball last or in a touchdown fest, Wadsworth's awfully difficult to beat in that kind of a game. So they need stops.
Right now, what Highland must do at all costs is get a 3 and out. They can't even afford to do, 1 or 2 first downs. Dino, I used to joke with him, Jim Truss and I used to go at it together. When Jim would say the punt's the most important play, I'd say, no, Coach, the first down's the most important play.
Well, it is. You're exactly right. The way Labus will make the catch at the special teams coverage and put Barrett Labus down at the
Davis tried his old two-step tango that time. They didn't buy it. So right now,
getting the sun in our face here a little bit. So for us, sunglasses. And here come the Grizzlies offense again. Schaefer throws over the middle behind Labus, who comes back and makes the catch nicely at the 40. Difficult. Labus to stop. Second down and out of the pistol. Schaefer to Labus, this time on the left side, back at the 38. Goes forward to the flags fly as Labus goes out of bounds at the Highland 45, but this one likely is coming back. It'll be our first penalty against the Wadsworth Grizzlies.
Highland playing way off of Labus. I'm not a big fan of it. It's almost like a long handoff, the pass off to the sideline.
Yeah, because it's almost guaranteed at least 5 to 6 yards, at least, when you play it off like that.
Yeah, and also, the theory is, too, that if a guy's on you, make him miss. Well, if you're the defender, you can't miss on him. You got to wrap and drop him immediately.
All right, so that penalty, we'll move it back to the Wadsworth 35, make it 2nd and 11, as it'll be a delay and a give. Leparo to the 35, out to the 40, and keeps his feet chopping now to the 44-yard line. They needed 11. He got about 9 on that carry.
And you knew it was going to happen. I should have called it out, because when I saw the trips this side, they had no intention. They were just trying.
Unless he was drawn off.
Dino, how long ago? It didn't seem like that long ago that you had to make contact if you were on defense to jump back.
I thought so. I thought you had to actually.
Yeah, now if you just go over, then you're done with it.
Officials are going to converse here.
Was the Hornet pulled off? It was the left tackle.
Yeah, it is going to be again. They will say somebody from Wadsworth must have moved, but it's enough to draw the penalty. So instead of 3rd and 2, now like Highlands defense, Grizzlies with a couple of penalties on this drive.
You want to talk about tough kid? Tackle Alex Tedelinsky. This is a tackle in the trenches, getting banged every play. 6 foot, 185 pounds.
And he loved
dog in a fight for the size of the fight in the dog. Amen. Or the size of the fight in the horse.
So Wadsworth will. I think somebody needed to tie their shoe or something here because they haven't started the play clock yet. Looks like we have there. Now we go. Okay. All right, 3rd and 7 now for the Grizzlies from their own 39. One receiver left. That's Labus. Trips to the right. Barrow will move to the left to quarterback Trey Schaefer. Schaefer gets the shotgun snap. Back to throw. All kinds of time. Looking. Fires deep over the middle. And Labus had it and had it knocked away at the 40-yard line at the very last. Mendenhall. Oh, what a play by Mendenhall to separate the football from Barrett Labus at the very last moment.
Labus had it. He had a step on him. All Mendenhall could do is reach his hand in there and rip, and he did it brilliant.
That was a brilliant play, and Highland gets the stop that they needed. Harwick punt the football, and Lynn Stewart will go in double safety. I believe Stewart is the deep man at the 25-yard line. It's getting harder to tell.
All right. There's too much.
Harwick will get the kick away. It's a high kick, fair catch, caught and yard line by Luke Stewart.
Job. When it bounced, it definitely was going to be bouncing towards their end zone. Okay, let's make a fair catch. Let's take it here. Let's get decent field position, which it is. Highland got their stop. Now they need to get a drive going.
So they will put it at the 31-yard line. And it's 1st down and 10.
If they're going to pass, they've got no doubt. Profit is being eaten. has not had time to throw.
Ross will get the carry on first down and gets back to the line of scrimmage, and that is it. As again, the defensive surge by the Grizzlies, this time by 303-pounder Cole Lamp at the nose, absolutely destroying the Highland offensive line.
Dude, that's the size you want of that nose tackle, and I hope he's got a little bit of a belly sticking over his belt, too. That's what you got to have in there.
So, back at the 31-yard line, no gain, 2nd down and 10. As quarterback Bryce Prophet out of the pistol, fake handoff, will throw it out right side and misfires to Brady Linder at the 30-yard line. Prophet kind of put a little air under it and knows he needed to deliver that quick strike in that formation. Again, keep in mind, this is Prophet returning to a position that he played a while ago.
He was a wide receiver.
He's a wide receiver. So it's, and again, he's had all summer. You've had scrimmages. You've had practices. But this is real game situation, and you're kind of learning to ride the bike again.
It was impressing me out of that defense of Wadsworth. They're making it tough on him.
Just overthrown. He had Brady Linder sidelines and just couldn't get it to him.
Lindor was open. He split the quarterback and the free safety sliding over to take him. Free safety a little high on top, but Prophet couldn't put it in.
Yeah, that's one, though. The Highland coaches are right next to us. That's one you kind of put maybe a little note in and say,
Pull it down just a little bit, right.
We'll try it again. Austin Riggenberg continues to be worked over here in this. This is his 4th. And a single safety, Barrett Lavis at his 36-yard line. High kick and fair catch made at the 34-yard line. Nice punt. Riggenberg has been terrific punting the football. That's not necessarily what Coach Mike Gibbons wants to hear. You don't want your punter to be the note. Let's see where they're going to spot the Wadsworth 44-yard line. It's a gain of 11. It'll be a first down.
Had a man out there.
Not as far as he would have thought.
Had a man out in front of him, too. Just to slow down a little bit, turning the corner, but my golly, that kid's a weapon.
And then over on the far side, Munch, we have another flag. And suddenly now, the Wadsworth Grizzlies, this is their 3rd penalty of the quarter, and it's their 3rd in the last 2 series here. And it has nullified some positive plays. The biggest penalty of the game was the holding against Highland near the goal line, but that's a big one. That'll take the football back to the 26-yard line.
You had the offsides by their right guard, and then you had 2 holds by the same receiver trying to spring Laparo.
Now it's 1st and 17. That completely stops the momentum. Wide receivers will shift 3 to the right. And now Laparo will go to the right of Schaefer. And it's now, as we said, it was 1st and 17, but now it's going to be 1st and 12 because somebody from Highland got a little anxious and went across the line of scrimmage early. So it makes it now 1st and 12.
Now, Dino, I know it's high school, but to quote dear friend Alabama Baker, in a case like that, if you're going to jump, you got to knock the guy across from his keister.
Yes.
And you got to start shaking your head and stuff like you're crazy to put some fear to make.
Do some damage.
Yes.
1st and 12.
Aren't you glad I'm here?
I am. I'll get you another season. Laparo in motion. And almost intercepted. Austin Shuck, the defensive end, stepped in front of Laparo and almost had a pick, and he would have had a touchdown going the other way with his momentum.
Shuck was carried that way. The only man that could have stopped was Schaefer, and he would have had a lead on him. Boy, he wants that one back in the big way. Great play by the 6'3", 210-pound senior Austin Shuck.
2nd and 12. We're down to 2:33 to play here in this first quarter. As Labus goes in motion, and by the huddle, and then one over the sidelines where I saw.
The one on the huddle would definitely be a hold. The one on the sidelines was when they grabbed.
So this may be an offset situation here.
Good to see the Highland faithful making the journey over, which isn't that far. And good to see again football alive and well in the great city of Wadsworth.
Yes, indeed. By the way, the officials, because we're on the visitor side, the officials aren't facing us when we see the calls, but it is offsetting penalties. It is still 2nd down and 12.
There's definitely a hold by Wadsworth, and you mentioned the face mask.
Okay. Anthony Serino will shift right to left. Now you got one receiver right side here for the Grizzlies, and you've got 3 to the left. 2nd down and 12. Play clock down to 5. Schaefer gets the shot to throw. Looks right, throws right for Labus. Tried to make a one-handed catch and couldn't pull it in at the 50-yard line out of bounds.
Great coverage by Aiden Castelonis. And that time, I think right now, Coach Gibbons and his Hornets are more worried about a passing attack. Dino, they only had 3 rushers that.
They're going to sell out for the pass like that.
Everybody else backpedaling. You got at least 5-6 yards just making through the first round.
On 3rd and 12, here's Schaefer. He looks, has all kinds of time. Steps up. Now he's flushed. Back at the 30. Sets a screen pass. Caught at the 40 and down at the 41-yard line. I believe that's Labus. And it's going to be close to the first down. And I mean very close.
They're going to have to measure. And again, a lot of space.
Ooh, they put it close to the 42. I thought he was going to be about half. They're going to, first things first, a Wadsworth Grizzly needs to tie his shoe. Tyler Montgomery needs to tie his shoe. Now he does. And they're not going to measure. They're going to say it's 4th and
about
less than a yard.
Yes.
Laparo stands to the left, the quarterback Trey Schaefer, and they may have just gotten Highland to go off sides.
Do you know what it is? It's not the line, because if you move to try to pull them off, you're going to get called. I'm going to tell you something. I'm watching Schaefer. Now, I can't hear what he's saying, but you know what? Looks like it's coming out staccato.
Cadence.
Yes, like staccato-like.
You know what? If it works, let him do it. Mm-hmm. No reason to stop. All right, so the gift 5 yards, and it's an automatic first down now for fakes the handoff, throws right side. Serino has it at the 44, crosses forward to the 50, and to the Highland 45-yard line. Good time on the throw to Anthony Serino, the sophomore. 2nd down and 2 as we approach 1 minute to play in the first quarter.
Shredded tackles by Jaworski and McNulty. When you're down 14-0 early on, you've got to be sure on the guys that bring them down.
Wide receivers go trips to the left, 1 to the right. Laparo and the pistol standing behind Schaefer. Fake to Laparo. Schaefer to throw. All day to throw. Now he's blitzed. Here he rolls right, looks, throws, and throws it out of bounds to one of the Highland coaches. Incomplete to bring up a 3rd down and 2. And finally, Highland was able to get a little bit of pressure. Colin Angus came in to flush Schaefer and make him roll to the right, and finally had the incomplete pass.
Dino, I also have to shout out running back Don Laparo, not only run with a bad attitude, and
the Submariner.
Yeah.
And they'll mark it back to the 46-yard line. And about 2.5 or 3, and Justin Todd's going to bring in his punt team here.
That's some good size, 6'4", 270 on Wavell.
Yeah. And he bust up that play. 20 seconds to play here in this first quarter.
He threw a lineman down.
Justin Todd now says he wants a timeout with 13 seconds to go in this first quarter.
Well, how good does this feel, being out at the high school football stadium on a Friday night?
It's pretty unbelievable. You know, it's the weather is perfect. You know, when we were here, Matt Florjancic and I were Dino, and it was a rainy night. And again, as the night wore on, the rains kept evening. I mean, I give Betsy Kling all kinds of props.
I call this the celestial thermostat.
Yes,
if I
that's
was
right.
going to set it, it is perfect. And here's what's great. Already the action faster for years. I got to point this out too. Because we talk about Coach Todd, we talk about Coach T. Gibbons. I was able to shoot a text off to Steve Trevisano today. Congrats, Coach. Everybody got back to my alma mater, Coach Jim McQuaid at Comets. They go get them today. They're playing
Hudson tonight.
Yes,
yeah.
and just in general, it really is a close-knit community. It's Saturday afternoon.
Saturday afternoon in a second. You're going to be busy tomorrow. Harwick's kick will drift inside the 10. It is caught by Brady. Hard line. He didn't want to just let it go and go inside the 5, so he grabbed it, and he's brought down those shy of the 10-yard line as the first quarter comes to a close.
I got to get this out because I've been through it with the lovely Mrs. Munch.
Yes.
I saw somebody before, a female with a mom with a green shirt on. I picked her up and said, "You got tackled." She jumped up and covered her eyes. So that is the modus operandi.
Well, I mean, that's from playing high school football and college football. Yeah, you do that. That's the way of parents, especially the moms. You just go, please don't hurt him.
When Clay went to the slot at Denison, the wife first came and asked me, so he's going across the middle, all the defensive players.
Against those Wabash Little Giants.
Dude,
those
I'll tell you.
Tigers.
The Wabash Little Giants, guys, Wally Wabash get liquored up in the parking lot. You got to keep an eye on. Dude, come on. Now.
I know.
You saying it.
Listen,
you've been pelted with batteries and stuff trying to do games.
You get to Crawfordsville, Indiana, and you get out in one piece. You congratulate yourself. That's one of the not so fun places in college football. It's a great atmosphere, but it's miserable if you're trying to announce from the opposite team.
The only comeback I had, Denison probably put 500 people there for a game, which is a long way to drive.
That's great.
And a very well-attired woman came up to me and said, "You should be ashamed about how many people you brought with you today. On the cover of the magazines, they're running back, but it looks like he just got out of the Indiana State Correctional Institute, And I said, "Oh, ma'am, I apologize, but I need to know, how long has he been out of jail?" And she gave me one of those whoops and walked away.
I was going to say, she had no comeback for that one. All right, we start the second quarter. It will be Highland with the ball at their own 10-yard line, needing some offense. Munch in midseason form here. First, you
got to hit the ground running.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
You got a game with Holman tomorrow. I mean, you got 2 this weekend to do. All right, Profit on first down, fakes the handoff, tries to swing it right side to Linder. It was it's an incomplete pass. I think they're calling it. It was very close to being a lateral.
Well, Dino, you cannot throw that pass to the sideline back there. Because, again, if it's behind the line of scrimmage, it's a lateral, it's a fumble, it's a live ball.
Yeah, they'll say incomplete pass. They'll keep it at the 10, so it's second down and 10. But Bryce Profit has had all kinds of difficulties throwing the football in his first game back at quarterback. They're going to say it's a lateral. That's what I thought, Munch, back at the 3. I think that's the right call.
Yeah, it is. It went out of bounds, so a fumble out of bounds to the dead ball. But my golly.
Good heads up by the officials. So now it's second and 17, and this is where Highland has seemingly been all game long, buried inside their own 5. Profit to the shotgun. Looks, throws, pass caught over the middle to 10, out to the 15-yard line. I believe that was Brady Linder on the catch. It was. They get up in a 3rd and 5.
That was huge. Linder only 5'8", but 185, a nice package on there. By the way, he's not that tall of a receiver, but you've got to convert this. You don't want to punt from back there again.
I don't think Highland's had a first down in this football game.
No, they have not.
So, I mean, if they can get something here and get 5 yards, get a first down, huge momentum boost for them. 3rd down and 5 from the 15. Get you a scoreboard update here from Tyler Carey in just a second, our first of the night. Lots of action going on in high school football. Play fake, pass over the middle to Linder's knocked away at the 19-yard line and intercepted. Cole McComas has it. The senior safety gets that deflected pass and gets the interception. 1st and 10 Wadsworth at the Highland 19-yard line. Trying to go to Linder again, and this time Wadsworth was ready.
Wadsworth was ready. He had 3 people around him. Yeah. He was enveloped. Schaefer still tried to, Prophet still tried to force it in there, and bang. Now here's what you do if you're Wadsworth. You go to the bro, you have a turnover, you strike quickly.
Yep.
Put the fear in them.
Yeah, I mean, I would look for either number 4 or number 17.
Or you put 3 trips out, you send the power, run up the gun again.
Yep. left, now looks right, has Laparo wide open at the 10, tackled the 5, go in. It's another touchdown for.
What do we have? A 20-yard pass? Unbelievable. And you know what?
Half. Laparo caught 13 passes last year. By my count, that's his third catch already of the night. 2 of them for touchdowns. And Munch, you said it, they went right up top. After the interception, the extra point, low kick by Toronto is good. 11:03 to play. 21-0 Wadsworth Grizzlies. Elsewhere, Medina, I'll give you the story on this. It was a crazy week. We didn't know where we were going to go until early in the afternoon Wednesday because the vote, your vote, I'm looking at all of you, was amazing.
Thousands of votes for the
55,000. Medina was one of the finalists.
That's my dog, Larry Laird.
Yeah, they lead Cleveland Heights 7-0 in the second quarter. They had the lead. We thought for sure we were going to Medina. When I went to bed Tuesday night, I thought I was going to Medina tonight. Barberton leads Norton 14-0 in the first quarter. Aurora over second quarter. Revere leading Buckeye 7-0. That's a bit of a surprise.
Yes, I agree with you.
The second
Buckeye
quarter.
Bucks, those are tough kids.
Hudson Solon, you mentioned that matchup earlier. They're tied at 7 in the first quarter. And Kenston, the defending champs, back to business. 14-0 over Black River in the first quarter. Kenston will be one of our nominees next week for Tom Kupsick.
Very good. And Jack Porter, the running back. 2 punch.
That was Munch. I saw them.
Chardon beat him.
We saw Chardon beat him, and then we saw them beat Buckeye in the playoffs, and then Matt championship. And that afternoon, everything was working for Kenston. Jeff Grubich has got himself a juggernaut, and Jeff Grubich is going to be tempted, I think, if Menor offers him, the chance
Steve's
to
job,
take Steve to go into the end zone for a touchback.
Steve's job is still open. We're not even talking about
look, Coach Triv has tremendous assistance, and there may be somebody on staff that they feel is the right person to take the baton. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying that I would think that the phone of Jeff Grubich will ring when the position becomes officially open. And by the by, I think a lot of us, we're impartial, we're neutral. We want to see a great Division I season, but there will be tears shed by a lot of us when Steve Trevisano coaches his last game, and I think a lot of us hope it's in Canton in a state championship. That championship.
100%. And it's interesting. I've got to do a Kenton game with you to arrange, though, because Grubich called me out. Said
He did call you out.
Dude, it was a long day. I don't want to get wet.
First down. Truitt will get the carry. He's knocked down back of the 19-yard line by Cole Lamb tonight. And it'll be second down and 11 as we're under 11 minutes to play here in the second quarter. 21-0 Wadsworth on 3 touchdown passes from Trey Schaefer.
They've got to break something sooner than later, or it's going to be a long, long evening.
As it will be Bryce Prophet out of the shotgun. And they'll go to Truitt swinging left side. He's out to the 20, head down to the 23, lost the football as he went down to the 24-yard line. Both sides saying they have it. We had a turnover on the last drive for Highland. And I think they said Truitt pounced back on it. He did, near the 24-yard line. So averting disaster there and getting about 6 yards on that pickup.
Little things that we see up here on the short side of the field. You had a receiver one-on-one with a DB, safety leaning towards the other side. You've got to pick those things up and go there.
So they'll spot the football now at the 24-yard line, 3rd down and 6. So give Truitt a gain of 5 on that last play. Highland still has not had a first down in this first. Shotgun for Prophet. Pressure. Steps up. Back at the 20. One out right side. Caught by Ross at the 36-yard line.
Whoa.
And they said he kept the foot in for a first down.
That was brilliant.
Catch by Anthony Ross.
Oh,
wow.
my. Ross needed to do. And have to tell you something. I don't know how he got that foot down.
I don't know Munch either. They'll spot him at the 37, but the side judge was right there. He had a great view of it, and it's the first down of the night for the Highland Hornets. And give Bryce Profit a lot of credit. He was blitzed by Karsten Marshall, was able to get out of it and get a first down. Linderman gets the catch, got drilled by Mike Jackson, but falls forward to the 39-yard line. It's a short gain of 2, but Jackson really gave him a hard shot over from his corner spot.
We've heard that name quite a few times today.
Yes, we
that
have.
young man from the safety position comes up in a big way. Actually, a quarterback.
Yeah.
It's like a safety, doesn't he?
Yeah. We called Jackson's number. McComas has an interception, and we called Marshall's number a lot tonight on this Wadsworth defense. Pick up a 2 on that pass play to Brady Linder. It'll be 2nd down and 8. 4 wide receivers go to the right now, and it'll be a jet sweep. Here comes Ross to the right, out to the 40, to the 40. And then Jazz Jackson, the middle linebacker, and Karsten Marshall, the strong safety. Be a gain of 3, so it's 3rd and 5. Much more manageable here for the Hornets.
You've got to hold your blocks if you're a wide receiver there. When I say hold, I don't mean okay. A seal block is so easy. I'm just taking you and pushing you to one side, and the running back goes to the other side.
3rd and 5 for Bryce Profit and the Hornets. Profit to throw with time. Lofts one deep, right side man wide open. Jaworski to the 20, 15, 10, 5, and touchdown for the Highland Hornets from Alex Jaworski.
79 yards.
Actually, 58 yards.
Pardon me. I can't count 21 to
Yes.
say I'm doing well.
I looked at like...
I'm sorry. I looked at 21. That's the score for Wadsworth.
58-yard touchdown pass from Bryce Profit to Alex Jaworski. And for the first time tonight, the Highland Hornet fans have something to cheer about as they are on the board with 7:52 to go in the first half.
Perfect touch. He laid it right in Jaworski's hands, and you couldn't do anything about it because he caught him in stride.
His last 2 passes, those to the right, the touch pass to Ross and the great catch, and then beautiful throw to Alex Jaworski. Bryce Profit comes through with the touchdown pass. The extra point by Justin Tepes is good. 7:50 quarter, first half, I should say. Oh, extra point was no good. I'm sorry. To the left, I thought it was good, but it was not good. So it's 21-6.
Or just every point you can.
As I say, sometimes the season for us too. Shame on the goalpost.
Interesting too, because being a Slavic Village guy, I hear the name Jaworski, I start getting hungry for some Slovak kobasi or something of that nature.
Well, by the way, they did bring us food for halftime.
Well, I will enjoy some.
And we're going to get you some water too.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yes.
I'm feeling pretty good though.
Yeah. You're going to have Hope. Who are they playing about? Hopewell?
Harrisburg, PA, who played for the championship in the big school.
All right. That's not shabby at all.
Division 6A, I believe. Every state has their different divisions.
Yes.
But Harrisburg, PA, coming in similar to Glenville with the prowess that they have.
That's a noon start tomorrow?
That's a noon start tomorrow at Downfield. I made sure that 7:20 I was in chapel at Mass today with the Knights from Holden.
I would expect no less. 21-6 after the touchdown pass from Profit to Jaworski. And Tepes kind of pooch it along the ground. It will be picked up. Laparo has it at the 15-yard line, follows his blocks to the 30, out to the 35, and put down at the 36-yard line. 1st and 10, Highland from there. Brett Bentley on the tackle for the Hornets on special teams.
So if you're going to pooch, you got to be running alongside that ball. You got to take off. They should have hit him 10 yards back further.
Yeah, you can't let him make a running catch at the 15-yard line like that.
Dino, interesting. I knew that Highland was going to struggle a little bit. So I understandably. And then it's not anything. When you have a Jake Rogers, come on, you have a quarterback who's been a receiver the last couple of years, there's some growing pains. But Wadsworth has just been unbelievable.
On first down, Schaefer throws Labus with the catch at the 45 and dragged by his jersey out of bounds for a first down at the 47-yard line. That's a gain of 11 for wide receiver Barrett Labus, the junior, and a first down.
Carter Bennett Hall. I don't pull, it's like an anchor.
Right.
If you can't pull him down, hold on to him, let him drag you. It's going to slow him down sooner than later.
Again, Trey Schaefer's accuracy has been deadly. He completed.
The kid's amazing.
Well, he completed even last year 70% of his passes. So, I mean, this isn't that unusual, but he's been razor sharp here tonight on week 1. Back to throw is Schaefer. Has all kinds of time. Looking, firing, deep right. Looking for Labus. Got the ball. Did he stay in bounds? Yes. At the 28-yard line of the Hornets. Terrific catch by Barrett Labus.
I am puzzled. The DB on that side waited until he caught the ball to make a move. You got to break on that ball as soon as it's in the air.
Well, and I love Schaefer going for broke there. He could have thrown to Laparo and probably gotten a first down on a shorter route. As Dom will get the carry to the 25, to the 20, 15, 10, 5. Laparo's in. Touchdown from 28 yards out. That is his 3rd touchdown of this first half. And Wadsworth has opened up a 27-6 lead.
28-yard run. My golly, he's had 20-yard pass, another pass earlier, something else. Nothing fancy.
No.
The offensive line dominated again that time.
Well, Wadsworth offensive line has been superb here tonight, as has been their defensive front 7. Here's the extra point from Blake Toronto. The kick is up, it is through, and it is good. With 7:05 to play in the first half, 28-6, Wadsworth. Laparo has caught 2 touchdowns. He has run for a score. Schaefer has thrown 3 touchdown passes. One of the scored at the second quarter now. North Royalton, North Ridgeville, all knotted up at 7.
I'll tell you something. Is that at the Palace up on the hill in North Royalton?
Yeah, at Serpentini, I believe
so.
Oh,
what a beautiful place there. And Ridgeville's a brand new facility, too.
Yeah.
DeMario McCall bumped into him in Columbus, said he wishes he had turf to run on, not the grass. Until junior high?
You imagine instead of the most of those nights he was running in mud puddles.
You had
stadium.
10 touchdowns and probably 400 yards to his total.
Absolutely.
Now, the old stadium was fun. However, I'll leave it at that.
The new place is great. I mean, so many of these new stadiums in high school football are just beautiful. And I mean,
Euclid's, the horseshoe that they have there.
Yep. I mean, so many of them. Brunswick Auto Mart Stadium is great. I mean, it really is. It's fun for us. They do make them announcer friendly. We appreciate
the Bad House
that.
of Madison, Lakeland Stadium, always fun. First Federal.
How nice would I couldn't make it out there last night, but I would have loved to have been there for that game. It was another unbelievable Menor Eds game. And one thing we were saying in our newsroom last night was that a similar thing happened last year where Menor beat St. Edward in the regular season, only to lose to them in the playoffs. And I would imagine that was Steve Trevisano's message to his guys after that game, is that kick is going to go out of the end zone. And another touchback here for Wadsworth. 1st and 10, Highland now at their own.
One thing to point out, because St. Edward came in with some consider to be the most vaunted defense in the entire state of Ohio. Talked to some of the St. Edward guys today, and they said, you know what? Yeah, our defense is great. You don't understand how great Menor's with the new quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. They just reload. And now, I mean, Menor's reward for beating St. Edward, they get St. Ignatius Friday night up at their place.
How much fun is that?
Oh,
that's just all about play them all.
Yep.
Line them up, bring them.
Yep. We want them all. All right, 1st and 10 now for the Hornets, down 28-6. As Prophet will go to Ross, and Ross will cross the 20 and take it out near the 25 to the 26-yard line. Anthony Ross doing it both as a runner and a receiver in the first half.
Only a sophomore, so good to have him come along a little bit and contribute. But still, you got to get back on the board here. You cannot go into halftime down like you are right now.
You want to get it to under a 2-score deficit if you can.
So you go for 2 then the next time.
Yeah, I would think so. As Prophet will give to Ross again, and this time only about a yard or so, and then he's immediately pushed back. And I got to tell you, one of the offensive linemen took a funny angle when he came back, but he's okay. And they'll spot the football at the 27. It'll be 3rd down and 3 for the Hornets. Halfway through the second quarter, 28-6, Wadsworth is the leader here on our opening night of our high school football game of the week.
Cole Lamb, Tyler Schwartz, the other defensive tackle, making good plays at times. As he Schwartz is listed as the end as they go with 3. They actually go with 3-3-5.
Profit will give to Linder on the jet sweep, and he's going to be buried back inside the 20 and wrestled down at the 15-yard line. Nick Razik, you mentioned him earlier, Munch. Boy, he stayed home at that end spot and made a brilliant play to destroy Brady Linder.
That's what happens when you're a 3-year starter. He saw it immediately.
Yep.
And you know what, though? You can recognize it, but then you don't hesitate.
Right. And you don't miss. So the market is a 5-6-yard loss. The 21-yard line, and Austin Riggenberg will punt the football to Barrett Labus. Labus will stand in single safety at his own 46-yard line, and the ball goes through the hands of Riggenberg. He picks it back up. He's in all kinds of trouble. He's going to get buried back at the 4-yard line.
Best thing for Riggenberg at that time would have been to grab it and run out of the back of the
Yeah,
end zone.
honestly. And instead...
That's a lot to ask a young fellow to do.
Yeah, in his first punt. And instead, it is going to be 1st and goal for Wadsworth. Logan Semi was the one who tackled him inside the 5-yard. Wadsworth, I mean, you almost get the feeling right now they're threatening to throw a knockout punch with 5 minutes to go in this first half. That's how dominant the Grizzlies offense has been, and they're going to take over at the 4-yard line for a 1st and goal.
Give it to the man who runs in a bad attitude. There's no doubt LaParo needs to push his 4th touchdown in
He
right
wants
now.
it.
Yeah.
You know he wants it. In the pistol. Schaefer, the quarterback. LaParo stands directly behind him on that short shotgun snap. Give LaParo up the gut, head down to the goal line, and not in.
I thought his knees hit it about the half-yard line. You see him look like a battering ram?
Yep. Used that. He got leverage there and was able to, and quickly, immediately the line is Schaefer. 2nd and goal from the 1. It's LaParo again running to his left. 2nd effort, and he's in for the touchdown. For the 4th time in this first half, Dom LaParo crosses the goal line for a touchdown, and Wadsworth firmly in command. They lead it 34-6.
Dino, I want to hit you with something. Last year, LaParo had 17 touchdowns, which is pretty darn good.
That's a great. See, in carrying the duty with Snowball,
yes,
you have another guy there. That's pretty impressive.
4 touchdowns today. Now, I'm not saying he's on pace for 40, but technically he's on pace for 40.
He's on pace for 40.
Yes.
That's what we're telling you right now. LaParo, the extra point is good by Toronto, and it's 35-6. Wadsworth. I mean, they have basically picked up right where they left off last year. They have won 21-22, and they have played in dominant fashion here tonight. Their only mistakes have been a couple of penalties. Left Alex Jaworski open. Other than that, it's been about a perfect half for Justin Todd and his Grizzlies.
Highland, like you said, they've lost some players. Their quarterback was a receiver last year. But the bottom line is, this is giving them a lot of. I am. Oh, I don't.
This is a cross. It's not technically a division. Highland is moving regions this year. You know, they're hopeful that, you know, playoffs by what I think it was like 20 of a point or whatever it was in the season and knocked them out of the playoffs. They're really seeing a Wadsworth Grizzlies team as this kick will be fielded, and coming out is Castellanos, and he'll take it forward near the 29-yard line, 1st and 10 for the Hornets with 4:40 to go in the half.
Put something on the board.
Yes.
I don't want just 3. Well, you're not going to eat up 440 anyway. You ball back and have them come down and score again.
No, you left on this side of the. So you want momentum for this offense. Figure out what works for you here and do it and move the football down the field here and get some momentum. 1st and 10, Hornets. They'll spot it at the Highland 28. And the give, Linder, jet sweep left. And he'll break a tackle nicely, gets to the 30, out to the 35-40. And Linder will be knocked out of bounds at the 40-yard line. It's a gain of close to 17 yards and a 1st down for Brady Linder.
Great run by Linder, something that they needed to have. And again, only 5'8", but 185 pounds. packs a nice little package. And when he turns it over, he's hard to bring down.
Awfully hard to bring down.
He's thick.
First and 30 to play in Hornets. They trail 35-6. And keep it off a nice fake, crosses the 50, takes it to the 49-yard line. I got to tell you, somebody for Wadsworth, Linder in the backfield, but Prophet with a nice job of ball handling. It was Razik.
That was our buddy.
Yeah. I mean,
Nicky said, I got another one.
I mean, he thought it was a similar time and got 6 yards.
Jet sweep a couple times, but I would like to see the runner have a full head of steam, come from way wide.
Well, and I'd like to see Prophet football more, use his abilities as he'll throw it, being chased. Jaworski's open and had it knocked away very last second by Mike Jackson inside the 15-yard line. Just a little too much air that time on that throw by Prophet. It gave Jackson a chance to come back and make that strip.
Jaworski was ready to pull it back in, and what do? Once the other guy put your hand in there, start flailing it away, try to rip, try to poke.
Jaworski is 6'3", Jackson is 5'8", but Jackson did a great job.
Yes.
Just as Jaworski with it made it right at the perfect moment to get that strip.
I'm just trying to see if Michael Jackson only wears one glove out there, DB.
I don't think he moonwalks. 3rd down and 4 as Prophet will give to Ross. Tries to swing left and fools nobody as a flag comes down as well. As Jazz Jackson and Karsten Marshall will put him down back at the 50 for a 2-yard loss. Let's check on that flag, though.
7 Grizzlies were on the tackle. Dino, you know what I always say? I want 11 helmets moving toward the ball, and 7 of them got to it.
And there's another problem here for Highland. There's an injured Grizzly over on that far side.
Actually, injured Hornet on that
side. Injured Hornet, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Over on that far side. And I think it might actually be Ross, Munch.
Well, like I said, he got tackled by 7 Grizzlies.
Yeah.
They just stormed in. I got to tell you something. I'm a big believer, too. Even if a guy's tackling you, I'm going to try to knock him off for you. You know, if I'm a blocker, I'm going to hustle over there.
Yeah, all the way around. It really is. Ross is up on his feet, and he is... Well, first he was limping, and now he's trotting off the field. The flag was against Highland, and obviously Wadsworth will decline the penalty and make the Hornets kick it away. But the most important is okay. It'll be 10-2 over on our near side by the Highland training staff with 3 in this quarter.
Does Todd go for the juggler with 3:37? Does he go gut and see what happens, or does he take one deep?
Now wait a minute here. I thought the officials said they declined the penalty, but I think they took the penalty, and it's going to be 3rd and 15 instead of 4th down.
It is 3rd and 15.
I could have sworn that I saw the official the
decline,
the decline signal.
I think the Grizzlies did decline. I thought they declined it, but apparently maybe there's.
Let's see. The ball's back at the 41, and we'll see if.
They're mulling it over.
This is interesting. It's the first game of the year for the officials, the coaches, the players. It is going to be 3rd down and 15.
So they accepted the penalty.
They accepted the penalty.
Okay. So, you know, Coach Todd is basically saying, keep moving them back.
Yep, keep moving them back.
After punt, we'll get even better field position.
Yep.
Confidence in his defense that, wow, we're giving him 2 more downs to get 15. Yep.
Well, I mean, at this stage, I think it's been 2 first downs all half here for the Hornets, and then they got the 58-yard touchdown pass. Alex Jaworski was able to slip down the seam wide open, but other than that, it's been about a letter-perfect first half. Now the officials, they
moved it back.
Declined the penalty. Ball's back at the 50.
Is that some game? Are they playing a dozen Tommy up here?
What's going on here?
Who's back in the desk? Camino back in the desk tonight.
Camino is the proud papa of Rocco.
Yes.
Is back at the desk tonight.
I told him for Rocco and Giovanni, I've got reservations at Dino Italian in 2030 for the three of the boys.
Yeah, mom and baby doing well, and Nick is back working the anchor desk for us tonight. It was so great to see him as I was walking out today. All right, Riggenberg to punt. Gets the kick away. Had some pressure there. And Labus will catch the line drive punt at the 15-yard line, goes out to the 24, and is tackled down at that 24-yard line. In coverage for Highland, Devin Simon on the stop. 3:13 to play here in the first half. Wadsworth with a commanding 35-6 lead, and they have 2 timeouts to work with, so they can do a little 2-minute drill practice here before halftime.
You know, I'll tell you, I'm laughing because I don't believe Labus knows what a fair catch is, okay?
I don't think he does either.
If he's been taught it, he didn't listen, he shut it out, and he wants to catch that ball and run every time it's going.
DeNatale and Mark, Munch Bishop here at Art Wright in Wadsworth. The host Grizzlies in firm command here in the first half, 35-6 over the Highland Hornets. WKYC Game of the Week. Happy to have you with us here in Week 1. Schaefer takes the throw, takes the run, I should say, throws to Labus on the right side, but it's well read. Is drilled inside the 20 by Devin Simon, who just made a tackle on the previous special teams play. He makes the tackle. They'll move it back to about the 18-yard line. It's a loss of 6.
I understand you're down 35-6, but you have to draw your line in the sand right now.
Love to see that.
Yes.
And I know Mike Gibbons does too. 2nd and 6. Will go trips to the left. Goes to the right, setting up a fly pattern, and it's incomplete.
Good coverage that time. Man-to-man sticking to him.
As he was looking down the field for Montgomery. And as Munch mentioned, well covered. I think it was Castellanes who had the perfect coverage there. 3rd and 16. And Montgomery, he's another tall receiver on this Wadsworth offense. 6'2", 185 pounds. Gorecki is 6'1", 180. And then you've got the speedster in Barrett Labus. He's 5'11", and Sereno's 5'9".
He gives you some targets.
Yeah. 3rd and 16, shotgun. Here's Schaefer, looking, has time, fires deep over the middle, and it is caught. First down at the 45-yard line for the Hornets as Ethan Gorecki makes that catch. Before he's brought down by Devin Simon. He was double-teamed, but it was a beautiful throw by Trey Schaefer.
The DBs of Highland are not looking for the football, so they don't see it until the receiver catches it. Sure, they tackle him, but my golly, you got to make a move on that ball.
Ball at the 45-yard line of the Hornets.
4 receivers.
Yeah, 4 receivers, a box formation left. Give Laparo straight up the gut to the 40, still on his feet to the 36-yard line. And a gain of about 9 on first down for Laparo as we close in on 2 minutes to go in the first half.
Well, Dino, again, you pull 4 more defenders over. Seems right now the kind of guy that you need more than 1 or 2 to tackle him.
Montgomery will go out wide right, trips wide left. Schaefer in the pistol. Laparo stands 2 steps behind him. 2nd and a yard. From the 36 of the Hornets, fake to Laparo. Schaefer to throw. Looks deep. He's looking for Gorecki in the end zone. It's knocked away and almost intercepted at the 1 by Alex Jaworski.
And what happened that time? He followed the football and was able to knock it away.
And I'll tell you, I think Gorecki did a good job switching from wide receiver to defensive back there. Jaworski to make the interception.
Well, that's what you need to do. If the defender's between you and the ball, you become the defensive back.
3rd and a yard. Highland and Wadsworth. Game of the Week extravaganza. Labus in motion on 3rd and 1. Give it to him on the jet sweep. First down to the 30. He's to the 20 and out of bounds. And they may actually spot him at the 21. We'll double check on that spot. But it is a first down run that time for Barrett Labus.
Good tightrope walker that time as he was trying to buy more turf along the sidelines. He got more than a lot of running backs would have.
First down there with 1:29 to go. Wadsworth with 2 timeouts remaining, already leading at 35-6. And just looking to add more before half. Breaks the tackle 20, 15, 10, 5, and he's in for his 5th touchdown of the first half. Dominic Laparo does it again.
24-yard run, and Dino, he was having a lot of success going into that one hole. This time he went to two between the center and the right guard. Nothing fancy. So it's not like, Wadsworth, throwing it deep, airing it out. That was a play that you need to stop them, and they could not.
Laparo has caught 2 touchdowns. Schaefer has thrown 3 touchdowns. And it is good. Dino boots it through to make it 42-6.
How long was that run? 28?
That was 24.
24. Interesting, too, with the kicker. I love that Clint Eastwood movie, Gran Torino. Really, featuring the young man who puts
not Gran Torino. Get off my lawn.
Bro, and I'm going to tell you something else. Even Freddie Kitchens will say, all I need my kicker to do is put it between those 2 yellow. That's what he's done. Pretty much automatic.
And if this score holds, we go to the second half, we'll be on a running clock mode here at this point. That's how dominant Wadsworth has been over, again, a Highland team. The season opener last year, take apart a good Brunswick squad, 28 now in Bowling Green. 8-2 last year, have made the playoffs for years. Wadsworth has been the word go here tonight.
57, so that means 3:03 expired in the first half. They put it in the end zone.
Dom Laparo, the touchdown runs and 2 touchdowns this football game.
I'll bet you he lined the field too yesterday. What else doesn't he do?
Is he going to go sell hot dogs in the second half? My goodness.
It's pop for best.
I know.
Stadium, yes.
Toronto will kick it off with 1:22 to go in the half. It's a line drive kick. It will go to the end zone and out of the end zone for a touchback. At the 20 here as we wrap up this first half.
Highland letting all the kicks go through the end zone.
Yes.
You would think that, you're not going to get a run back, break even one of those, or get it up to the 40 or 50-yard line. Take the ball on the 25, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 25. I said, 25-yard line. No, just one of the 20. I always thought it was the 25, but I think over the last year, between high school and college, they keep moving it, and sometimes it's hard for us to keep track of. 1st and 10 for the Hornets. Ball at the 20-yard line. 1:22 to go, first half. It's been all Wadsworth, with the exception of one profit touchdown pass, as the give is to Truitt on first down. And Harrison Truitt will cross the 24 and take it near the 25-yard line. One touchdown pass from 58 yards from Profit to Jaworski, and that has been it for Highland tonight. It has been Trey Schaefer, Dom Laparo, and Barrett Lavis, and the rest of this high-powered, explosive attack for the Wadsworth Grizzlies.
And Schaefer looks like it's just a second. Very poised, very in control.
Yeah, very, very accurate. 2nd and 5, and Profit, in no hurry to go this play. He'll run it. He'll get it across the 30-yard line. That's a first down. With 39 seconds to go, the clock will stop momentarily to move the chains.
And 4 Grizzlies on the stop again.
Yeah.
There are 11 helmets moving to the football each and every time. Now, 11 aren't going to get there, but 11 have to move to it.
All 11 players on the defense for individual plays at one point or another. Marshall has a sack. Lavis has a big TFL. McComas with a safety. TFL for Jackson.
Jackson.
Mike Jackson's been terrific. It's been a dominant defensive effort tonight to go with the offense. Profit turns, gives. It's Truitt again. He'll run to the 35-yard line, and that's probably going to do it for the first half. All right, so
a couple guys being separated here.
And this is
53 of Highland interior linemen. Or what do you? I think Schwartz for Wadsworth.
You hate to see that. Clock will stop with 13 seconds to go, and I think some of the captains on Wadsworth are just saying, "Hey, relax, relax, relax."
They ripped him away quickly. Yes, he's going to go against
Wadsworth. It was against Wadsworth, so it's a 15-yard penalty and move it out to the 50-yard line. And Jazz Jackson went over and said something as the linebacker went over and said something to his coach, and now runs back in to get the defensive play in. But that's going to do it for the first half, as Highland has no interest. Well, wait a minute. I said it was going to do it for the first half.
Gibbons called a timeout?
Must have. Ball at the 50-yard line. Hey, you appreciate that. You want to, hey, let's take a shot. Let's see if we can take one down the field and get one. I appreciate that.
The only thing is, what are you going to drop? Play cover 4?
Yeah, it's basically, it's going to be a jump ball. Well, we've seen Prophet's got a terrific arm. That's one thing. And
Jaworski at 6'3", you go up and get it.
The one thing I've been impressed, Bryce Prophet, for a guy who hasn't played quarterback in a couple of years, he's got the touch back with his throws. He just hasn't had a lot of time to throw the football. Wadsworth's deep long. Now let's see. Jaworski is out to the near side right. You've got Trips out left.
One-on-one, but you have a safety looking that way in a big way. Only a cover 2, so they feel their quarterbacks can handle wide receivers.
Here's Prophet. He'll walk one for Jaworski. He's open and just overshot him at about the 15-yard line. He was there.
Yeah, he got open.
Yeah.
Safety was a little late getting over to help the quarterback on the coverage, but I like the way Jaworski runs routes.
But again, the problem, Munch, is Highland can't stop the rush coming in from the outside, and Bryce Prophet has no time to throw. That's why that pass was overshot. He didn't have a chance to really set his feet down.
Cole Lamp is a force in the middle, so 2 guys have to handle him, which leaves Razik and Schwartz at 2 ends wide open. Plus they're shooting a CV sometimes, too.
All right, 3 seconds to go in the half. 2nd and 10 for the Hornets at midfield. And I would suspect you'll probably see the same thing. Now, this time, Prophet will give it. Harrison Truitt will run it, gets 2 yards to the 48, and that will do it, I think, now, for the first half.
That will do it.
That will do it for the half. Okay, we will have coverage of the bands coming up in just a second. I'm going to reboot our phone here, and so we don't miss out on the bands. And then Munch and I will be back with the second half coming up in just a few moments. Stay with us here in the WKYC Game of the Week. Your score at the half, it's Wadsworth 42 and Highland 6.
Big Dog, what's up?
Oh, you're the man.
How much fun is this?
Yeah. Oh, more fun, as you would say, more fun than anybody should have.
Yeah. Did Ralph from Wood?
Yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
He calls me. They disappeared for like 3 days. He's been put in the club for 30 years.
All right.
So we're going back to these bikes in a second.
Yeah. So we don't need those anymore.
Whoa.
Yeah, what did work? What's it? That was a guy like. Oh,
You got plates over here too. Like,
it's a pot, bro. No, I'm good.
I mean, that's some great commentary when we were out. It was just spot on. Oh, yeah, was that? I did some great.
There we go. I was trying to figure out the follow over there.
Well, I hear somebody's no idea.
Off of their album, No Strings Attached. This is 555.
Right? I mean,
Just hate it better.
yeah. So things are. You're doing well. Everything good?
Crazy good. I mean, it's like, the next thing you have building. Tomorrow, though, it's raining. If you trade with someone else, I would actually, Dean, you on Saturday, 3 to 4:30. Wait a minute. 5 to 5:30. Bring it in.
Yeah.
I just say, I thought it'd be closer. I traded him. I'm doing like all the games on Sunday. I just got post-game Indians.
Yeah.
And then Triv went Labor Day after. So I'm doing 3 to 6 this show from Walmart. Phil Leonard gives every dollar to come by into that. Turn off. I'm retired, so they're trying to bring me back to do cookie joint thing.
Yeah.
That's why you
I work for these miles. I'm retired, I don't want any hassles.
Yeah.
I should go get hassles. Yeah. What do you mean? I said, if you do something, do it your way, not their way, you'll get it. I don't care what you do. I got money, but I saw it. They're the local stores.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I know, Roger Morgan used to be a master. Wow. He said to me, is there anything hard that I can ask? And I said, me as a business person, I'm selling, so don't worry about that. How many years? How could you have lost that? They didn't have Munch, Dino, Jason, Andrew Monterey, Andrea Cole, Andrea Cole, 40 years in a row. Casey Phillips, T.J. Zuppe, Daryl Ryder, Bill Birch, He Willie. Just 12 good people.
Yeah. It's just.
That was, because Kobe 10 ESPN up right through. But then ESPN had New York, Chicago, and LA. They kept New York and LA. It's LMA.
Gotcha.
No! And again, sometimes I think, that's what they are. Because they get a large dose.
Right.
I lost some respect.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, they're doing good. That's
Kerry was, I got a call from Kerry. It's like during the afternoon. She's like, you're never going to believe who was here. At Cleveland Stadium.
Doing what? Where?
Cleveland Stadium.
Doing what?
With Sam Pines on the sales call. He was out, and Aaron was out, I guess, back. Kerry will tell you. I guess because he didn't get an invite to Dennis Gates's introduction.
So you know what? I like Gates. I got a hand today, Gates saying, I guess, I told who's Roger at the new?
Roger McAfee? Yeah.
That's Roger. Get Gates. If you want to make some noise, because of the 50-50 acquisition, you should get Gates and get 52 votes down.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was out to get him down to the studio soon. Because as soon as I put one of those guys on, I usually get a call from Rose Severoff and Calhoun at Arizona State.
Right.
I'm in all those cities.
12 rock bands rejected half together before the Turtles made it number 1 in 1967. Billboard still rated and you know you're right. Michael for a while. Half together.
Joining us here tonight as the week 1 matchup between the Wadsworth Grizzlies and Highland Hornets is halfway through.
What a pleasure.
My gosh, back in the Flanagan days. I mean, I've been listening to you, oh my gosh, forever. Yeah.
I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
no, absolutely.
What a pleasure.
Oh, I just it
Starting in the second quarter again.
You'll hear about trade and library still left down, and of course, it's all over. But that's okay.
Another touchdown. The second touchdown of the day, making it 21-0. Grizzlies. Then kind of starting to get this momentum going. They had 15-yard pass. Passing from Bryce. Profit.
Let's get back to
Number 11.
Thank you.
No, I'm good, brother.
I don't want to take one. Oh, I didn't want the last one.
No, you never want to be that guy.
Two big runs, 28-6, 35-6 on the second quarter. Second quarter, about a minute and a half left.
Oh, it's really big.
42-6. Just
No,
like
I
that,
don't.
the Grizzlies jumped in and made
I
the
guess
lead.
we'd love to go to a park and change the park to the yard.
Right?
I busted up.
Why would you? I mean, this place is like it's like on an island. It's legal.
Hunter on Highland fumbled the snap, and they were able to tackle and give the Grizzlies ball at the 3-yard line. So a lot of
Did me
those
good.
defensive and defensive have been showing up
Took
tonight.
big
So
pass.
about
I cleaned
halfway through
that out.
halftime, Grizzlies up
Lot less
42-6. Ready for that third quarter here.
Can you pop that light on? I mean,
And 2 years ago, when Joey Hoffman was there, we had Mr. Football, we had 80% of the passing. So,
Big Wadsworth such a good
quite
up.
obviously, I mean, you can't.
You might be running between the tackles.
I would think.
Yeah. And you can't stop them.
You have to reinvent and come up with a game plan around the players that you have. So,
It's what happened.
with,
We didn't play like that. All I can get was the team. It's a tribute night.
there's no reason to put the ball up.
You have to disseminate that.
Do you get the is it the Mike Elmer? I don't because I love Mike Elmer to death, but he never gets started. And I tell him, I'm like, Mike, I don't. It's just to help me spot the game. I said, I don't think your size or your name. I said, I just need to know so I can call the game and do my job. Right. And it was, and no, he goes, no, I trust you. He goes, I don't want. It's one of those things. He doesn't want the guys who are starting to get a big hit. I'm like, well.
Nobody knows the deal with every sheet.
That's why I told him. I'm like, I won't announce who's starting in the starting lineup. I said, I just need to do my job. And so that's always been. I love him to death, but that's always been one thing that I can't stand. So, but yeah, you can, like some of these schools, like you can get a roster, or you can get stats, but you can't get starters. But it was not. Jim Donovan and I, like, Trey was the best player, one of the best.
He's one of the best players in the States. Yeah. You know.
What?
DeNatale is in your guys' fan club too.
All right, Munch.
You ready, baby?
Yeah. All right, everybody. Welcome you back here to Art Wright Stadium in Wadsworth, DeNatale and Mark Bishop. Get the phone over there so you can see my boy Munchy.
You got my good side. That's what counts.
Well, that's it. So we welcome you back here to Wadsworth at halftime. 42-6. Wadsworth leading Highland here in Munch. It's now, it's going to be a running clock here for Highland. It's figured out. It's playing 24 good minutes and putting things together and trying to get something positive for next week. And I think for Wadsworth, it's clean second half. No penalties, no mistakes, nothing stupid, and get your guys ready to go for this long season.
Do you stay with the game plan if you're Wadsworth? Mix up the pass and run. Just so folks know too, listening in, running clock is if you're up by 30 or more, right?
That's right.
And right now we have the score 42-6. And if Highland will come out and score, then the running clock goes away. Goes up, but you keep that 30 points. But you do Wadsworth, it's just error-free, be a fine-tuned machine. You have to go to your playbook because a lot of these plays were nothing fancy. They won't stop.
I mean, and you look at Munch, it's when you're trying to figure out, okay, I think that's your mission right now. If you're Mike Gibbons in the second half, it's getting. Tonight was you faced a buzzsaw. You and the best to succeed, and we can use that going forward and still have a tremendous season. It's one night. I mean, you have a tremendous season, and I talk as if I don't expect a 36-point comeback because I don't expect a 36-point comeback. But that, I think, is how you need to look at things if you're two teams.
Do you try to establish a running game if you're the Hornets, something that you could build off of? I mean, they've got some very credible running.
We saw Harrison Truitt, and it got called back by a penalty, but it was a 56-yard run that really I could have been a difference maker, a game changer, if you will, had it not been called back by a penalty.
Ross could run. We've seen that.
Now, the kicker is, and I say that part of the pun, Ross got hurt before the end of the half. So
I saw him sprinting along
sign.
behind the bench right before halftime, so kind of kicked it out of it. He was moving pretty good.
Tyler Carey just let me know he'll have some score. South, it's Lake, Avon, they call Avon Lake just Lake, not Avon. And Avon Lake called Avon people South. So it's Lake versus South.
You know, I
know you're an Avon Lake resident.
I call it north of the tracks.
That's what I always do too. But it's
the Golden Spike.
That's right. Lake v. South.
Okay.
So that's something I've not heard, but I love that rivalry. I love the fact that it's a significant rivalry.
Matt Kostelnik is really, with the legendary coach Dave Zalewski, Kostelnik has the guy come in, except, and I got to tell you, if you ever seen Ray Seconds work today, the ends of Wadsworth, Avon Lake's ends, Nick Larson's one that they have put it in scrimmages, but they have been wreaking havoc in the backfield.
Yeah. I can't guarantee anything, folks, but I would imagine at some point we'll see an Avon Lake game this year, Avon Lake Memorial Stadium, or one of the road games, because
Shorty Sherman lurking the sidelines.
Yeah.
Shorty's my guy.
I know he's your guy.
Think about legendary things. You got the railroad car there. There's a ticket window. Every school has their little nuances that make it special.
Right. I mean, tonight before the Wadsworth Grizzlies ran out from under the big inflatable bear, that got them going. Exciting and beautiful.
Right.
All right, we start the second half. Highland's going to kick off to the Wadsworth Grizzlies.
42-6, Grizzlies in command. And Wadsworth has a new returner, Brennan Gray. And Gray crosses the 20, probably the football, took it to the 30, and then ran out of bounds there. So already you're seeing the impact of this 36-point score as Barrett Labus and Don Leparo are not the guys back returning kicks.
Gray came in and returned. But I got to tell you this, and again, this is on Hudson. This is tough love. He fumbled the ball inside the 10-yard line. You can't possibly let him get out to the 30. Get down there like your hair's on fire.
Make plays. Now, we'll see here in the second half how long we'll see the Wadsworth starters. The clock has not started yet, but
it should have started on the kickoff.
It will be after. It's 11:39. It should be a moving clock, isn't it?
The 30 points is
36 points. I thought.
You always just say A's do well.
First and 10. Anthony Serino in motion, and he'll get it. Second and 9 here for the Grizzlies. Wadsworth in the first half got 5 touchdowns from running back Don Leparo. 3 on the ground, 2 through the air. Quarterback Trey Schaefer has thrown 3 touchdown passes. He throws behind onto Serino, makes a great catch at the 29, goes forward to the 35 and out to the 39-yard line for, let's see, that's a gain of about 7. It's going to be a little shy of a first down. But Anthony Serino, that was, again, near a lateral. And Serino made a one-handed catch to pull it in. And the fact that he even got positive yardage like that, it's pretty impressive. It's just shy of the 40, so it's going to be turned down about a yard here for the Grizzlies.
A good sure tackle by Castellanos.
And we have a new quarterback in the game, Mark Munch Bishop. Matt Thompson, a 6'1", 161-pound freshman, is in there. We have a new running back as well. Thompson keeps it. First down to the 45, and he'll run it to the 48-yard line. The sophomore is going to get some valuable experience, and it's a first down.
Big boys up front who are the backups here as well.
Near the 49-yard line. So the night for Trey Schaefer is over. The night for Dom Leparo is over. Josh Heller, saw him in the backfield.
But he did it earlier than I thought.
And Josh Bach is your other running back.
And it makes it fun for the play-by-play guy.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed. On your
Get
toes there,
roster,
DeNatale.
baby. Thompson gives Bach. Will have it to the 49 and then a wrestle back for no gain. It's a tough no gain there. Pretty good job by the Highland defense. Jack Van Foxhole, inside linebacker, leading the charge. Paul Buddy on the defensive end.
A lot of new linemen, too.
Yeah.
Saw Max Kubler in there, 73. 5'10", 290-pound junior. You got to like that size. Dino, this is unbelievable for Matt Thompson, the sophomore quarterback. Sleight of hand. I'm going to call him Harry Houdini if I've always been on the street. He put the ball in the gut of the running back, pulled it out, hit it on his hip, and then bang, took off.
That's a great job.
Yeah.
Score updates here. Medina leading Cleveland Heights 7-0 at the half. It's a good game. Barberton over Norton 28-2 at the half. Aurora leading Brush 14-0. That's now in the third quarter. Revere over Buckeye still 13-3. That's in the third quarter. More scores here coming up.
They get the Avon Lake score.
I know. I want it from the 24
Lake
yard
South.
line. Back to throw Thompson. Swings it right side. The pass is dropped. Back at the 27-yard line. That's the attempted receiver. Ethan Urksa in there. Also, Massey leading St. Vincent St. Mary 21-14 in the second quarter.
Another shootout.
Hudson over Solon at the half. That is 20-15 at the break. And the defending champions, Kenston, leading Black River 35-0.
So they are going into their gear at the end of the season.
Yep. Mr. Tom Kupsick, Mr. Porter, and the rest of those Kenston Bombers picking up right where they left off. 2nd and 10. Here's Thompson. Looking right. He'll swing it out. Bach with the catch at the 25. Steps inside at the 21. And taken down at about the 19-yard line. It's a lot of effort for a gain of 5 because it really is a swing out pass from the right side. But Bach able to get some positive yardage here. It's third down at 4.
And that was, they just had one incomplete to the right side. So you know what, boys? Let's move that side again.
Yep.
Work that side again.
Thompson gets the sideline. Attempt a field goal, we will. So again, and this is not running up the score. This is getting my field goal early in the season and test his attempt.
(42-6). Wadsworth in control. But not like this.
And by the time Highland got their offense drive, it has the distance. He's not perfect. He was 6 for 6 on extra points, but he misses that 36-yard field goal. And Highland will take over with 5. Third quarter. If you're just joining us, though, Wadsworth struck early, and they struck off as quarterback Trey Schaefer threw a couple of touchdown passes. 3 of them, actually. 2 to Laparo, 1 to Barrett Davis, and then Laparo ran for 3 touchdowns, and the next thing you know, it's 42-6. Highland's only touchdown, a TD pass from Prophet to Jaworski from 58 yards, but that's been it.
Right now, first game of the season, Laparo, Davis.
Timeout taken by Highland.
All that is one-dimensional. Montgomery's a big receiver.
And that's the thing. I mean, we only saw part of the attack. I mean, I still saw Korecki was still in there. But, yeah, I mean, those 3 are going to be the guys this offense is going to go through. And unlike last year where it's a 2-back attack, you know, now Justin Todd feels like, hey, look, we can maybe be more balanced and we can throw the football a little bit more. But they know with Laparo, if he needs to run it 35 times a game, to do that.
Not at all. And he showed he could do it all. And you know what? Once you start pounding him, that's when he slides out to catch a pass.
Yeah, absolutely. And he is dangerous out in the flat. On first down, Harrison Truitt will get the handoff, makes a couple of nice moves, flags fly, and as Truitt crosses the 25 out to the likely he's going to come back.
Yeah, there was a hold. Somebody tried to push this guy out of the side. You can't grab young fella. You can't grab. Remember the days when you were taught that you grab your own jersey and your
right. Yeah, if you're watching us here on the TV,
you grab it here.
Right. See, that is cool. That's nice. Yeah, exactly. Like that. You demonstrate. People, it sounds like radio. People actually know.
You know, it's funny today too because I went to grab a polo shirt. 5 or 6 of them were teams that might stir some ire on the fans.
Trust me.
So I figured East Texas area. You
I
too?
I have a couple of Channel 3 polos that I wear. The Highland, I'm sorry, the Wadsworth Grizzlies red.
Okay. Well, I had a Denison and it's red. And I had my daughter's Tulane is green. That's Highland.
Right. So I'm like, if I wear the white, I'm pretty safe.
And as Tom Hamilton taught me years ago, so much will give me things if it's free in Spain.
Right, and you wear it. Yes. After the holding penalty, Profit will go back on the yard line on a 1st and 22 from the 8. Yards 10, so the second down at 20. Clock continues to run. We're under 4:10 to play in the third quarter. 42-6.
Santa Claus, but he's keeping a list, checking it twice. See who's naughty actually with the penalties. Few too many.
Penalty against
Wadsworth.
It's a 5-yard penalty. I didn't see what it was, but it was ball out near the 15-yard line. Second and 15.
With the running clock, you can't get your backups in. You sure can.
Oh, you
put them in earlier.
Right.
Now, I also understand to keep my starters in longer. I need to play all 4 quarters. So it's not like, well, I'm sliding the guys on the depth chart. No, you've got to be able to go 4 quarters.
You've got to play.
Yeah.
As another flag goes down, the pass from Bryce Profit is caught. I think that's Linder over on the left side. He crossed the 20, and that's where the flag went down and was run out of bounds near the 24. Second flag.
How many games have you seen that we've done? We go down to the last minute and we have
a ton of them.
Yes.
I mean, I felt like every game we did last year. This is a night like tonight is an anomaly from what we've had over the last. This is now our 16th week of doing this. 15 weeks last year, 16th week this year. I mean, I think this is only the second time we're going to have a lopsided score, not counting the state championship game. This one is going to be a penalty on Highland and back at the 10. I assume I'm holding. Again, we can't see because the officials' backs are turned to us when they make the penalty.
Boy, plenty of dirty laundry on that field. Wadsworth for being dominant. That's one thing too. If I'm Coach Todd, I'm talking to the boys about
this. And I'm sure he'll say that.
And especially on some long runs. When Lavis had pushed it outside, those holes were 10, 15. So the run and straight.
Yeah, I mean, it's, as I said before halftime.
For the whole district,
as Profit throws, pass caught at the 15-yard line and being taken out of bounds there. Is wide receiver Dane McNulty. We've seen him on the offensive side tonight. And we have more whistles.
Another Grizzly down. The guy to be able to tackle there.
It looks like we have a Wadsworth player down over on the Highland bench. Highland people are tending to him until the Wadsworth players can get over there on the far side.
And they're sprinting over in a hurry. McNulty, again, one of the captains of the team, along with Linder, Profit, and Paul Moody. The offensive lineman.
Paul Moody is one of my favorite players. I remember last year, he was a terror. Grizzlies was Ethan Russell, who's their starting quarterback.
Yeah.
We have rare stoppages with this running clock. 2:03 to play. 3. Wadsworth in command, 42-6.
I like two of these communities. You got a couple of Russell boys on the team, a couple of Jackson boys on the team. Stay together. Helps build. That's what Steve Cooper started with on the foundation. Keep them there and keep the families coming. Make you want to. Mark Alvarito did that. Make the kids want to be a Tiger.
Yeah, but just under 2 minutes.
That's what I think Justin Todd now in his 4th year is trying to do. He did that at Loudonville before he moved up here and came to Wadsworth. And, I mean, it's a program now. It's a legitimate powerhouse. His Profit is pressured back at his 10 and throws. Pass caught and a running catch by Linder at the 20, upended at the 25-yard line on 2nd and 14. But a nice job by Bryce Profit to buy some time. Allow Brady Linder to streak open heading towards the right sideline.
against the
they are.
first teamers.
Spotted at the 25, so it'll be a third down and 5. Third quarter.
And you think about this too, Dino. All these young men went through the 2-a-days or one long a day, whatever coach had. And it's good to see them get some playing time.
Absolutely. And basically, if you're Wadsworth, your second teamers are going to get a half's worth of actions. Profits throws incompletely to McNulty's on 3rd and 5 over the side.
They had somebody slide through the second level, wide open at the 45-yard line. Just didn't see it.
Some of the starters were still in there for Wadsworth's defense. Not all of them, but some of them. Marshall was backfield, but it would be a 4th down. Or just have a tough night. It is not.
It is not. Okay.
No, I think that's Robbie Lynn.
Okay.
Regenberg gets the kick away. It is Lynn.
Wow. Nice kick.
Lynn will watch it roll inside the 30. And will roll to a stop at the 24-yard line. Just a little experience here for Robbie. He wasn't sure.
Fair catch that one, yes.
Yeah. And he'll learn that with time. He's only a junior. 8 seconds to go here in the third quarter.
That was a quick quarter. That's what the running clock does, huh?
Yes. So again, the WKYC Game of the Week philosophy is simple. We put the games up on Monday around noon or so.
WKYC.com.
WKYC.com.
Are they easy to find?
They're very easy to find. We keep it on the site. We keep it up for about 48 hours, actually a little bit longer than that. And you have an opportunity to vote on 3 games that we pick, 3 nominees. And you tell us where you want us to be, and we're there. 55,000 of you voted in that 2-day span this week. As on first down, Thompson will get the ball. And being brought down the backfield. The amount of support from it literally was like out back and forth.
Wait a minute, you know what?
Right?
You had 3 Nevada County schools.
and so certainly we hope for that, but we're going to pick 3 games that we think are going to be, all the communities, get everybody excited, get everyone enthusiastic, and hopefully a good competitive games. Tonight, unfortunately, people was on. Good call, DeNatale, but we saw
well, this is a big
and a Highland team that was 8-2 last year against a 12-1 Wadsworth team. Mm-hmm. Good backyard Medina County brawl here in the Suburban League. But tonight it was Wadsworth looks very, very good on both sides of the football.
And you mentioned 12-1, which tells me they kids that my son, they played 15. So how do you feel? They'll play another one.
That's right.
Yeah, just keep going.
Start the fourth quarter here in Wadsworth at Art Wright Stadium. As Matt Thompson will give the ball on the second round of this. Down 5 carry. Take it out to the 21-yard line. It's third down and 13 coming up.
And Coach Todd is just running the ball between the tackles. That's just saying, hey, we've got our lead. You know what? I guarantee you he's challenging the defense on the sideline. So, you know what? Let's keep him at 6. Yes. We're going to run the ball. We're going to punt it back to him. Keep it at 6.
Keep it at 6. 3rd and 13. We got movement everywhere, both sides. I think so too. And we mentioned that. That's going to be something that I'm sure. Keep the looking at my phone. There's a Tyler Curry up
there. What a game. Well, I thank you, Vinny, for Vinny Barretta for sending that to me. But give me a score, bro.
What's a score? My goodness. I'll give you some scores in a second. It's 3rd and 18.
But people are loving what we're doing.
I know. Thompson is going to be hit in the backfield and dragged down for a loss. The sack, Aiden Castellanos made that play for the Highland Hornets. It'll be a fourth down in a punting situation. Over in Medina at the Bee's Nest, at the Beehive, I should say, Medina and Cleveland Heights tied at 7 in the fourth quarter.
Well, you know, Heights, to keep them to 7 so far with their speed,
yes.
Larry Laird put together a great defensive plan. You know, Max Stevens is sending people D1 left and right these days.
Barberton 34, Norton 2.
Whoa. 35-2.
And
they lost their main running back.
I know.
In this Division 2.
Yeah. Fourth down. Here's the punt. Harwick will kick it away from his own end zone. It's a short kick. And Linder will let it bounce. And will roll to a stop at the Wadsworth 43-yard line. So Highland will start in Wadsworth territory with 9:52 to go on this turning clock in the fourth quarter. What else? Let's see. Massillon leading St. V 21-14 at the half. Hudson 27-2 in the third quarter.
Aurora, 3 turnovers by Solon, by the way, in that game.
Yeah. Aurora shutting out Brush 21-0 in the fourth quarter. I'll tell you, there's a program I want to keep an eye on this year, Aurora, because they don't miss the play. Bob Mahalik's teams don't miss the playoffs very often.
And that's what I caught wind of. But again, I have my Asia provocateurs out and about.
I know you do.
Aurora wants to schedule Kenston again to get them back on the schedule.
I would love that.
Yes.
New quarterback in the game. New quarterback. It's Riggenberg. Andrew Riggenberg is your
sophomore too. Get him some reps. Yes.
I think I'm going to call him Austin. It's Andrew Riggenberg. Other Austrians. 41 yards in front of us because they were standing up and cheering.
A lot of the
when they saw him in there. And by the way, those same Kenston Bombers 35-0 over Black River down. That game is in Sullivan tonight, as Truitt will get the handoff on second down and go nowhere, so it'll be third down and long. An atmosphere next week. Kenston back home for the first time in the state championship, and they get their Friday night. Talking about an atmosphere.
Mark Imerino, I believe, with a win today, winning his coach, overtaking when I was in high school, the great John Pop.
Oh, I love Coach Imerino.
24-16, Warren Harding over Kent.
Thank you for the score, Vinny. Open the middle pass, incomplete. As Riggenberg was trying to throw to a streaking Brett Bentley. And about the ball was right in his hands and just couldn't pull it in.
Pass was there.
It was there. Mm-hmm. Riggenberg with a nice arm. He'll set up a fourth down. And we know he can punt. And Andrew Riggenberg is only a 171 pounds. So it looks like it'll be his job for 2
this year. Does Profit go back out to receive?
I mean, there's a couple throws by Riggenberg. I mean, see what he does. But that I could see that. It's fourth down. Riggenberg to throw. Sets up. Throws to Truitt left side to the 35. First down to the 30. Inside of the 25. And a first down in the Riggenberg
family right in front of
like love and life. And so it'll be a first down for Truitt. 7:23 to go here in the football game. After the game, I'll head down to the field and say hi to Justin Todd. And I would imagine
I'll join you if you'd like.
Please do.
Thank you.
Justin
I don't want to get called out anymore.
Yeah. Justin, we'll say hi to Justin Todd. I'll also grab Dom Laparo as well. A couple quick interviews that we'll put at our Twitter site. This time it will be rolling to the right side. That's Christian. Another new. Looked like he was taking snaps.
They're moving him in. Yeah. Another sophomore.
Yeah.
Delaney, nice.
This is becoming a competition. We saw Riggenberg before, now we're seeing Phillips. Why not? 6:40 to go. 2nd and 12 from the 24. 42-6. It's all Wadsworth here at Art Wright Stadium. Home opener, the season opener for Wadsworth, and they have been impressive tonight from the word go.
They've been rolling, that's all you can say. The Grizzlies.
Phillips looks to throw. Rolls left, fires, pass is caught and dropped inside the 20 at about the 18-yard line. Kristen Delaney was thinking about a touchdown before pulling in that football. Bring up 3rd down and 12. Still moves over 6 minutes to go.
No. Indians and Tampa are 0-0 at least through 6. But Tyler Lake will crash into the wall, catches the ball, has to leave the game with a leg injury. But you know what? He caught the ball. I mean,
Of course he did.
you know, people were on Zimmer when he grabbed. No, you don't think about. You have to hit it with reckless abandon, catch the ball, and then hope for the best.
That series with Tampa Bay is important because I think the Indians are going to be they're going to make the playoffs and be as a wild card.
You need 2 out of 3.
Yes.
In the Tropicana dump, if I may say.
Pitch out to Truitt. Inside the 10 and down near the 8-yard line. It'll be a first and goal for the.
Off him early on to get up. Down to the football too. He secured it. He had that bicycle out.
I like the way he runs.
Mm-hmm. Once he gets through the hole, kind of straight up runner.
Phillips in the pistol.
North and south.
Truitt stands behind him. 2 receivers right, 1 to the left. First and goal for the Hornets. Truitt will get the handoff. Truitt will take it. Only about a half yard into that. Wadsworth defense really strung that out nicely.
Well, it's interesting because some of the linemen close to the goal line, you got to push guys back with you.
Colin Fryer made the tackle for the Grizzlies. We go under 5 minutes to play on this turning clock. 42-6 in favor of the Grizzlies. Touchdowns tonight for Dom Laparo. 3 TD passes for quarterback Trey Schaefer. 4:30 to play. Second and goal from the 9. Phillips looks to throw, fires one into the end zone, trying to loft it in, and it's incomplete. Haney, running back, drifting out to the right side. Point throw to get it there. 39. And for some reason, the clock is stopped.
Phillips getting some snaps as a sophomore. Regenberg, who's also the punter, getting some snaps. He's a
yeah, taking a look at what he's got, getting his sophomores a chance to play. 3rd and goal from the 9. Under 4 minutes to go. Highland trailing 42-6, trying to put a touchdown on the board here. Phillips gives ball inside the 5, down to the 4-yard line. That's Haney again. Receiver on that last pass.
Haney's running hard.
Goal, yes. 4th and goal at the 4-yard line.
You got to go for it. Yeah. But here's where I give the ball to Truitt again.
I would.
He's been around a little bit longer, okay? Just a junior.
Let's see if he's in there. He is not. It is still right at Phillips. 4 wides. 4th and goal from the 4. Phillips looks, end zone, caught in the back of the end zone for a touchdown by Christian Delaney. A nice little drive there by the Highland Hornets. By a scoring pass. 4 yards. Delaney to make it 42-12.
Something to put on your resume. Something to build on. Delaney holding on to the football.
Look, I want more.
Now, important for Tempest to get this field.
Yes.
Extra point, I'm sorry.
Extra point. This is the first one. That extra point is up. And again, it's same kick as before. It sails to the left. But that one, it went through. And it's 42-13. This is that first one in the first half.
So the running clock. 9 points.
That's right. So that will keep us now at a regular clock for in this 4th quarter.
You know, and math skills are minimal. You realize that.
And so am I. It's been, again, it's the first game of the season. 58-yard touchdown on that Jaworski pass earlier in the game.
I had a long
that was about my maximum that I could do for you.
I keep forgetting we had the running clock because the score I just got now 24-24 from Molotov Stadium in New Orleans, Harding against Canton McKinley. It's only the 3rd quarter there. Yeah. Most games are only in the 3rd.
Let's see. I'm trying to see here if I can get an Avon Lake score.
Avon Lake patch, maybe?
We will post, by the way, on Monday where we are going to be. There are 3 options for you at WKYC.com. Make sure you check that out. Avon Lake leading 12-7 over Avon with 9:06 to go in the 4th quarter.
It's a lot of time.
Yes.
12-7.
12-7.
12-7. So I don't know if they have 2 touchdowns and went for 2, knowing back to stomach, or 4 field goals. It remains to be seen.
Well, it's because it was 9-7 at the end of the third quarter.
So you would think 4 field
I
goals.
don't think 4
Yeah.
field goals.
Hey, they count.
It all counts the same. Especially, listen, you imagine how big it would be for Avon to start the year with over Avon.
Oh, monster.
Massive.
Because right now everybody
Massive.
feels that Avon's rolling
Still,
against
yeah, still,
postseason.
Avon is still the class of Lorain County, still the class of Division II, Region 6, and all that. That would be a huge way to start the season for sure.
You know, I'll never forget Mike Elder telling me years ago, saying I was at a banquet for him, fundraiser, before he coached the game when he first came over.
They were from Perry.
Yeah, and he said, Munch, he goes, just give me 3-4 years. I see the talent around here. I see this community blowing up with families moving in. That's the key.
You have a problem here, and Justin Todd is irate because they just got the kickoff, and he was trying to get the offense in, and you had a player who didn't know if he was supposed to be in there or not, and, well, he's not going to be in there anymore. Just one of those things, so you have to take the time out. And, you know, the reason why a coach is upset, you say, well, Coach, you're up 42-13. You may need, you have to be aware
Right, you
of
can't
when you're
have
supposed
12
to be in there.
And you know, to me, okay, I held you. I was trying to get you out of the way, and I slipped you. That could happen. But 12 men on the field, inexcusable.
Yes.
Inexcusable.
Yes. It doesn't matter if you're a starter or on the third
Right.
team. So they had to burn a timeout there. 1st and 10. Thompson from the shotgun. Box stands behind him. And a little bit of a problem with the handoff. Actually, it's a new running back. Brennan Gray is the ball carrier. And there was a... Gray was able to grab it and did well just to kind of plunge back to the 23. It's a loss of 2, 2nd and 12. Clock running, 2:40 to go here in the 4th quarter.
A nice sure tackle that time by the Highland Hornets, wrapping him and dropping him.
2nd and 12. There's Thompson. Throws over the middle. The pass dropped at the 25-yard line.
The young fellas
A little bit behind him, but that's a catchable football.
The young fellas getting some playing time here, trying to make something happen too. He's trying to take off and run before the ball.
You're trying to have a highlight.
ball behind him. Yes.
You're trying to have a moment, and you're excited. You get to play in front of your fans and everything, and it's part of the youth. 3rd and 12. Thompson. We're going to try to shoot over the middle. Pass deflected, and it's incomplete. I think the nearest receiver over on that left side was Jared Justice. And it's a 3 and out for Wadsworth. 2:21 to go. 4th quarter, and you see Harwick into punt the football once again.
The Thompson's 6 foot, so he's not diminutive. He's going to get that ball over the defensive line.
New returner, at least one new returner for Highland, is Kevin Peichel. He's the deep man. Luke Stewart is the short man near the 50-yard line. They're essentially double. Touchdown. Obviously, yeah, nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be at least coming out Riggenbrook, but we'll see Phillips probably as well. 2:08 to go, 4th quarter. 42-13, Wadsworth, scoring all their points in the first half. Circus of just big plays, courtesy of Don Laparo and Trey Schaefer. And Barrett Latis.
Boy, Schaefer runs a tight ship, doesn't he?
He does. Terrific quarterback. On 1st down, Ringenberg over the middle. Pass is caught inside the 35, breaking away. There goes.
The money.
Second on his
Still along the way.
game. Highland and try to put more on the board, trailing 42-13. This time,
Rickenberg will keep it, and he'll take it inside the 15-yard line, back to about the 13, so maybe a yard, and that's really about it. Clock's still running. We're down to a minute 40 to go.
Don't know if I want him running the football.
Not as much.
Yeah.
He's more valuable to me as a thrower.
Amen.
That's when you use Phil. If you're gonna do some, kind of the other formations, then use Phillips maybe, a read option. And Rickenberg will give it swinging right side inside the 6-yard line. To his right at the 5, trying touchdown. I love it. I love it. It's but a young as a punter and now as a quarterback making plays tonight. The families love it. I love seeing it.
Puts it in the end zone. Great run too. Broke some tackles along the way. Very nice run.
That's good for the Rickenbergs.
Yeah,
I know, right?
He's your quarterback and punter. You want to keep him upright.
Here's the extra point. It's good. He's putting it through the straight tackles. 42-20. This one will look a little closer than what the actual balance of the game was, but a couple of nice touchdowns here in the last 2 drives by the Highland backups here. A lot of effort. I think that'll be something for them to think about as they move their way into the next couple of weeks. I think they've got getting on their schedule coming up, maybe even onto their schedule too before they get into the team of the Suburban League. So some backups have really shown themselves to be pretty well for the Highland Hornets.
What a great community.
Yeah. Always, and it's funny, and it's the community of our friend Jim Donovan. He was hoping this game was at Highland because, it's right not too far from the Donovan farm. But, it's a great community, and it's a football program that really, as we said, 2 playoff appearances in the last 4 years, but really a traditional power over the last 10, 15 years. And with a brand new stadium, another school that has a really new stadium. And
the Palace.
Yes.
Boy, it's not enough. This is a beautiful place, too.
Oh, I love it here. Art Wright Stadium. The kickoff's away. There's a whistle down. Somebody ran. For the Hornets. They did.
You're anxious. You want to get back in and get something else on the board.
In the game. 42-20. Wadsworth. They've won 22 consecutive regular season games here since this one is over. And
all under Coach Todd.
All under Coach Todd. Something else, my friend. Something else.
Little things too, like the helmets. I love, like the Grizzlies stripe Paul.
Yep.
Little things like that is still pride. One of the first things asked, they want to see the helmets.
Absolutely. You want to know what you're going to see. We'll be on the field afterwards. Again, we'll put some interviews up at our Twitter site. And
at
also
WKYC?
At WKYC. And also, you'll see it on our game page here at WKYC.com. So
I want people to know I'm not leaning in to get my hot camera time from Dino. My seat takes away the last 20 yards.
Yes.
Of the south side of the field.
As that kick is fielded for the Grizzlies, Brennan Gray reversed his field. He ran upfield, now worked back. I'm sure they'll talk about that tomorrow. They'll take it down back inside the 15-yard line.
Never run
Can't
back.
run back.
If you're Barry Sanders,
maybe.
You know what I mean? Marcus Allen.
Yes.
But
pretty much after that, you're done.
Thank you.
36 seconds to
Jabril
go.
Peppers?
Yes. Jabril Peppers, no. So pretty much here, the Grizzlies can put this one to a knee and put this one to bed. An impressive opening night performance tonight by Wadsworth. Offensively, defensively, special teams. Everything worked tonight for the Grizz.
And it worked from the get-go. They had a game plan. 8:37 in. Schaefer had a 12-yard pass to Davis, and bang. That's what you do.
Never look back.
The truck was rolling downhill without brakes in the 18-wheeler.
Matt Thompson will go to the victory formation here. And he'll go to a knee.
I like Thompson too, don't you?
Oh, I like Thompson. I think he'll be the guy that'll get the first crack next year at being the guy. And every time, and I think every time Justin Todd can give him some work and give him a look, going forward, you just got to jump. Down here at Art Wright Stadium, your final score: the Wadsworth Grizzlies 42 and the Highland Hornets. Performance from the Grizzlies, who have now won 22 regular season games in a row.
I mean, right there, that tells you what this team is all about.
My friend, always great to have you.
Everything I say, I'm WKYC.com, you're my dog.
You're my dog.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll head to the field. Post-game interviews coming up again on our social. Get back next week. Munch will see you in a couple weeks. Hopefully, it becomes available for you. We'll hopefully get you with us.
I'd be glad to be here.
Thanks. And we'd love to have you with us too. Again, your final Wadsworth 42 in Highland 20. I'm Dave DeNatale and Mark Munch Bishop. Thanks for watching, everyone, here at WKYC.